Men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. If you're a lover of Shakespeare, that passage from Act 1 of Julius Caesar might be on your mind right now, because this week we saw MAGA faithful Republicans make the latest Trump pilgrimage, showing their fealty at the trial of a man accused of making hush money payments to the former porn star Stormy Daniels to stop her from going public with their alleged affair during the 2016 election. And we saw these Republicans, indoctrinated by Trump, do this not once, not even twice, but 3 times. 3 times, Monday, Tuesday, and yesterday, 3 different groups of the Red Tie Brigade, most of them members of the legislative branch of our federal government, skipped out on their day jobs to do Donald Trump's bidding and attack this nation's criminal justice system. We've never seen anything like this. And while this performative display of devotion to Trump is a lot of things, unethical, anti-democratic, demoralizing, and just really cringy, it's also, and this isn't exactly a journalistic way of describing something, it's also weird as hell. It's just phenomenally bizarre. Imagine trying to explain what's happening right now, this week, to yourself from 10 years ago. Remember 2014, before Donald Trump came down that wretched escalator and began his one-man mission of destroying seemingly every norm he possibly could in American politics? Imagine telling that version of yourself from 10 years ago that the guy from the "You're Fired" reality show has rendered the Republican Party into a bunch of servile sycophants willing to attack the criminal justice system for a guy on criminal trial in a cover-up scandal involving a porn star. The Party of Lincoln, they call it. The Law and Order Party. And these are members of Congress making this Trump trek, including the Speaker of the House of Representatives, people elected by voters like you and me, people whose salaries are paid for with our taxes, yours and mine. These obsequious lackeys are playing hooky from their day jobs to parade before reporters at the behest of their dear leader, who has conditioned them into this madness. This is the boiling frog experiment on steroids. Imagine if you told your boss you were going to miss tomorrow's appointment or shift or team meeting because you had a friend who's not really a friend on trial for something like this. The missing MAGA lawmakers did not go unnoticed on Capitol Hill this week, by the way. That was especially true in Republican-led House committee hearings, where those Republicans doing Donald Trump's bidding are attacking his campaign rival, President Biden, and his Attorney General, Merrick Garland.
Well, it's nice to see that some of my colleagues on the other side could make it today. I don't know if that means that there weren't enough seats in the courtroom in New York, but I know that the Oversight Committee canceled a hearing that was supposed to happen right now on this matter so that they could be at the president's trial. I know some members will miss this vote because they want to be at the president's trial, and I don't think that anything could animate the phrase "do nothing Congress" more than missing votes and canceling hearings to go up and be a spectator at your cult leader's trial. That is the definition of "do nothing Congress."
Now, these hearings are investigations themselves in search of a crime. Late last night, when that aforementioned Oversight Committee meeting did finally happen, Republicans started even more chaos.
Do you know what we're here for? You know we're here about AG.
I don't think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about. I
think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No, ain't nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Mr. Chairman,
That's beneath even
the order of your committee.
Order.
I do have a point of order, and I would like to move to take down Ms. Green's words. That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?
Are your feelings hurt?
Her words down.
Aw.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Oh, really?
Don't even play.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad-built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's part of the.
I'm trying to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to strike those words.
I had no idea what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just.
You just voted to do
Y'all did it
it.
first, so you don't want to talk about
voted to do it.
Okay, that's what got all the attention. What didn't get the attention it deserved are moments like this from Congresswoman Crockett, who'll join us in a moment.
This idea of lacking all decorum, decency has left the building when the stench of Donald Trump showed up. And so we've seen constantly from him how he mocks people. We've seen in this committee how different members want to mock other members. And that's all this is about. If this was so important as it relates to whether or not the President of the United States has done something so wrong, then why is it that we couldn't have our hearing at 11 o'clock this morning instead of members being in a criminal courthouse with a twice impeached, over 88 count indicted sexual abuser, instead of being here to do the work of the American people if this was serious?
It wasn't just Democrats calling out the trial-bound caravan of Republicans groveling to Trump. Earlier this week, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski told Huffington Post, quote, "Do we have something to do around here other than watch a stupid porn trial? I mean, this is ridiculous." Now, it's a fair question because the answer is yes. Members of Congress do have a lot more things to do, except that's not what Republicans do anymore. They don't work with Democrats to find common ground and pass laws to make life better for Americans like you and me. Like those frogs in the boiling pot, Trump has conditioned them, broken norm by broken norm, to spread the American carnage that he talked about in his very first moments as president on his inauguration day. The number of Republicans who remain unwilling to bend the knee is growing smaller and smaller. This week of insanity was capped off with the New York Times reporting yet another Trump-induced controversy for the Supreme Court. Quote, after the 2020 presidential election, as some Trump supporters falsely claimed that President Biden had stolen the office, many of them displayed a startling symbol outside their homes, on their cars, and in online posts: an upside-down American flag. One of the homes flying an inverted flag during that time was the residence of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito in Alexandria, Virginia, according to photographs and interviews with neighbors, end quote. We begin our conversation tonight with the Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Democrat of Texas, and as we mentioned, a member of the House Oversight Committee. She's also a civil rights and a criminal defense attorney whom we've known for some time. We knew her when she was in the Texas legislature, and an observer back then would have realized that one may pick a fight with you, Congresswoman Crockett, but one has to expect one is going to get a fight back.
Absolutely. It's great to see you. And thank you so much for showing that I actually was trying to engage in something of substance in the committee hearing as well, because unfortunately the drama is the only thing that anyone knows about what happened yesterday. But when we talk about whether or not Republicans are serious about doing the work of the people, you have to juxtapose the fact that the Speaker of the House specifically disinvited the President of Kenya for a joint address to Congress because he said, we're just too busy, we have too many things to do. And then these people don't even show up for work. And instead, by the time they come in, all they do is wreak chaos and havoc.
Let's talk about this concept of even that oversight hearing, the things that are getting discussed. As we described it, it's an investigation in search of a crime. There's an actual crime or that's being tried in a court, but this Congress seems fixated on doing things about and around Donald Trump. At some point, when you go back to your district in Texas, people must be telling you this can't be what they expect Congress to be doing.
No, absolutely not. You know, my district wants me to work on real issues, such as my constituent, Eugene Gates, who worked for the Postal Service and died under terrible working conditions. They want us to investigate that. They want us to come up with things to make sure that we can save lives. But this particular committee has decided, because they've engaged in failure after failure after failure, that now we want to point to A.G. Garland. And because we weren't able to get the Homeland Security secretary, and because we weren't able to get the president, now let's decide we're going to go after the attorney general and instead say, you know what, hold him in contempt. They talked about jailing him, another thing that wasn't highlighted, but they talked about throw him in jail. Now they want to throw him in jail. Imagine this, Ali. They want to throw him in jail because they say, well, we didn't get the audio recordings of the voluntary statement that was given by the president of the United States. We have the transcript, and you heard Comer say last night, I've got 2 hearing aids. I can't hear. So why he needs the audio, I'm still kind of confused. But nevertheless, they want to throw him in jail for that, yet they want to go and defend Trump for something so much more egregious and act like he should not be in jail at all. That's who these people are.
But isn't that the problem? Because at one point, Mike Johnson had said this about impeachments. He said, you know, once you start going down this road, everybody just does it to everybody. Is this not the point, though, that they are distracting from Donald Trump's alleged criminality by turning what are policy issues? If you don't like what the Homeland Security Secretary is doing, that's a policy issue. You vote the bums out and you get a new Homeland Security. If you don't like what the Attorney General is doing, it's the same thing. They are turning policy disputes into something that is meant to look like criminality.
Absolutely, because they want to make it seem as if everyone is on the same level as Trump. And the reality is that Trump is in the basement. The rest of us are residing above the basement. And you think about this, Ali, what are we dealing with right now with the Supreme Court? We are dealing with lawyers that are saying, you know what? He needs to have a pass to commit crimes while he's president. And the Supreme Court is actually listening and weighing in on this as if it's anything to think about. This is what we've devolved in. This is why this is not the party of law and order. This is why we saw all of the chaos yesterday with Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is why we saw chaos last week with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So there is no they're there and both sides are equally bad. That is not the truth. The reality is that once Marjorie broke the rules yesterday, Comer decided he wasn't going to enforce the rules, and I decided that I didn't sign up to come to Congress to be anybody's doormat, and so therefore I was not going to violate the rules. But because I understand the rules and I'm a good lawyer, I decided to just ask a parliamentary inquiry.